realize that you were testifying against not only co-defendants but family members?
Yes.
Who is the person that was captured on the video recording shooting Charles McCormick?
My son.
Yo Shocking News reveals that Ksoo literally just received a sentence that made him collapse when he heard what his punishment was going to be. And let me tell you, he may have to choose some of his final meals. From Ksoo being allegedly connected to ambushing and killing Charles Lil Buck Jr., a rival associated with the 6 Block gang, to his own dad being involved, bro, this got to be the wildest case of the year. I got all of the details, and before we find the results of his court hearing, we got to get into what actually went down that day. The day it happened. On January 23, 2020, around 11:45 p.m., the Moncrief area of Jacksonville became the scene of what prosecutors would later call a calculated ambush. Charles McCormick Jr., better known as Lil Buck from the 6 Block crew, was standing outside a Woodcrest apartment when shots rang out. According to witness testimony and surveillance footage, a stolen silver Nissan Altima pulled up, and someone inside opened fire, hitting Buck multiple times. He died at the scene, just 23 years old. What made this hit different from your typical street beef was how strategic it was. The shooters didn't just slide through and pop off. They allegedly planned this whole thing out, from stealing the car to timing their approach. Surveillance cameras caught the Nissan circling the block multiple times before the shooting, like they were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office found that Nissan crashed and abandoned about 2 miles from the murder scene. Inside, they recovered shell casings that matched the ones at the crime scene. But here's where it gets wild. Investigators also found DNA evidence that would later point them toward their suspects. And now y'all better get ready to how I said I got all the details, because this is just the tip of the iceberg for Ksoo's case. Within days, the streets were buzzing about who was behind the hit. Social media was going crazy with theories and accusations flying back and forth between ATK, Ace's top killers, and 6 Block. These weren't just rap crews beefing over music. This was a real street war that had been brewing for years, claiming bodies on both sides. Hakeem Robinson, known to his fans as Ksoo, was already making waves in the Jacksonville rap scene. At just 20 years old, he had tracks hitting millions of views and was seen as one of the city's most promising artists. His aggressive style and raw lyrics about street life resonated with fans who knew he wasn't just rapping fairy tales, he was really living what he was spitting. But he wasn't just spitting, he was active on Instagram posting things that would later get him caught up with evidence used against him.
Did you see anything on social media posted by your son Hakeem Robinson that concerned you?
Yes, sir.
And what was that specifically?
Oh, it was they called it the story. It's on the story saying killing the toes done.
His own dad saw that he was moving wild on Instagram, saying some crazy stuff, but then he even said this.
When you saw that, were you upset?
Yes, sir.
Did you try and reach out and speak to Hakeem Robinson?
Yes, sir.
And when you spoke to him, what did you tell him?
I told him he need to take that down.
He already knew something was up and he was apparently against it. But this is why it gets people confused, because if he was against it, then why would be sitting in the investigation room and later accused of being a part of the operation?
Did he deny being involved when you told him to take that down?
No.
But Ksoo wasn't just any rapper caught up in street politics. He was the son of Abdul Robinson, a well-known figure in Jacksonville streets who went by Blue. The Robinson family had deep ties to the ATK crew, and when the beef with 6 Block heated up, they were right in the middle of it. And when your family has ties to it and then you're born, you already know he was going to be involved in the life. What's crazy is how fast everything moved after the shooting. By February 2020, just weeks after Buck's murder, investigators had zeroed in on their suspects. They had surveillance footage from multiple angles, cell phone data showing who was in the area, and that DNA evidence from the stolen car. The case was building quick, but nobody could have predicted how it would all play out. The investigation revealed some wild details about the night of the murder. According to court documents, cell phone records showed Ksoo's phone pinging in the area of the shooting right around the time Buck got killed. They also had social media evidence, posts and messages that prosecutors said showed planning and celebration after the hit. Dominique Barner, known on the streets as Buddha, became a key figure in the case. This dude was supposedly tight with the ATK crew and had inside knowledge of what went down. When the feds pressed him, he flipped and started talking. According to Buddha's testimony, he was present during conversations where the murder was planned and knew exactly who pulled the trigger. But here's what really set this case apart from your typical street shooting: the motive. Prosecutors laid out a theory that this wasn't just random violence or territorial beef. They said Buck's murder was direct retaliation for a diss track. See, 6 Block had dropped a song called Who I Smoke that straight up mocked the death of Willie Addison. And Willie wasn't just anybody. He was the stepson of Ksoo's father, Blue. The disrespect in that track was on another level. They were smoking on Willie's pack, using his death as a punchline, and basically celebrating the fact that ATK took a loss. In the streets, that kind of disrespect doesn't go unanswered, and prosecutors argued that's exactly what led to Buck catching those bullets outside his apartment. As the investigation heated up, more evidence started piling up. They had witnesses who claimed to see Ksoo and his cousin Leroy Whitaker Jr., known as ATK Scotty, in the area that night. The forensic team worked overtime analyzing the shell casings, the DNA evidence, and every frame of that surveillance footage. In the court hearing, prosecutors presented evidence claimed to show that Ksoo was wearing the same exact black and gray hoodie that he wore on the murder of Charles McCormick on IG Live. But that was just the tip of the evidence, because this is nothing compared to the bombshells that Ksoo's father would drop in court and during investigation. What made the case even more complex was how it played out in the public eye. This wasn't happening in the shadows. Everything was unfolding on social media in real time. Fans were picking sides, sharing theories, and turning the whole situation into content. The intersection of street beef and internet culture created a circus that made it hard to separate fact from fiction. By the time arrests were made, the Jacksonville rap scene was in chaos. Shows were getting canceled due to security concerns, artists were choosing sides, and the feds were watching everything. The Buck murder had escalated an already deadly beef into something that threatened to tear the whole city's hip-hop community apart. The ATK versus 6 Block beef. To really understand why Ksoo is sitting in a cell facing life, you gotta understand the war between ATK and 6 Block. This beef didn't start with Buck's murder, it goes way deeper than that, with bodies dropping on both sides for years. A TK, which stands for Ace's Top Killers, formed around Youngeen Ace, one of Jacksonville's biggest rap stars. The crew included Ksoo, his brother Scotty, and a bunch of other young dudes from the north side. They weren't just a rap group, they were a real street organization that moved like a family. 6 Block, named after their 6th Street territory, was their main opposition. Led by rappers like Fulio, they represented a different section of Jacksonville and had their own following. What started as neighborhood tension turned into something way more deadly when the music got involved. The beef really exploded in June 2018 when Youngeen Ace's brother Trevon Bullard and 2 other ATK members got killed in a shooting at Town Center Mall. Ace survived but got hit 8 times. That shooting changed everything. What might have been squashed before became a blood feud that demanded retaliation. From that point on, both sides started dropping diss tracks that were basically death threats set to beats. They would mock their dead ops, claim bodies in their lyrics, and use social media to taunt each other after every shooting. The music videos showed them flashing guns, throwing up gang signs, and disrespecting their enemies' fallen soldiers. What made Jacksonville different from other cities with drill scenes was how personal everything was. These weren't just rappers beefing for clout, these were kids who grew up together, went to the same schools and knew each other's families. When they dissed each other's dead homies, they were talking about people they actually knew. The Who I Smoke remix that 6 Block dropped was a game changer. Using the beat from Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles, they turned a pop song into one of the most disrespectful diss tracks in drill history. They were literally smoking on dead ATK members, including Willie Addison, who was Blue's stepson and Ksoo's stepbrother. According to the streets and later prosecutor arguments, this level of disrespect couldn't go unanswered. In Jacksonville's drill culture, letting your dead homies get dissed without retaliation was seen as the ultimate sign of weakness. The pressure to get back was intense, especially for someone like Ksoo, who had family members being mocked in these songs. Even in concerts, affiliates like Youngeen Ace were recorded where he would rap lyrics a year before the murder.
I can't let you live. No, I can't let you live. I can't let you live.
But the beef wasn't just playing out in music videos and Instagram posts. Real bodies were dropping. Between 2018 and 2020, Jacksonville saw dozens of young men killed in what police linked to this ongoing war. Every death led to more retaliation, more diss tracks, and more pressure to keep the cycle going. Social media made everything worse. Every move these dudes made was documented. They would post their location, flash their weapons, and basically give their ops a roadmap to find them. The same platforms that were making them famous were also making them targets. What's wild is how the music industry played into all this. Record labels were signing these artists knowing full well they were active in street beef. The more controversial the content, the more views it got. The more bodies that dropped, the more authentic the music seemed. It was a deadly feedback loop where violence equaled credibility, equaled money. For Ksoo specifically, his position in this beef was complicated. He wasn't just another soldier. He was one of ATK's most visible members, dropping songs like Bibby Story that got millions of views. His lyrics were raw and specific, naming names and claiming bodies in ways that prosecutors would later use against him. The forensic evidence in Buck's case painted a picture of how calculated these hits had become. This wasn't spontaneous violence. This was planned and executed like a military operation. The stolen car, the surveillance of the target, the escape route, everything suggested this was retaliation carried out with precision. By early 2020, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office had created a whole task force dedicated to this beef. They were monitoring social media, analyzing lyrics, and trying to prevent the next shooting. But they were always one step behind. By the time they figured out who was beefing with who, another body had already dropped. But history shows that most of the time when there is this much evidence, it is only a matter of time until you end up behind bars. The culture around the beef was toxic but magnetic. Fans picked sides like it was sports, cheering for their favorite artists while dissing the ops in comment sections. YouTube channels dedicated to breaking down the beef got millions of views. People who had never set foot in Jacksonville were invested in this war like it was a TV show. What made Ksoo's situation even more complex was his family's involvement. With Blue being his father and a respected figure in the streets, there was additional pressure to maintain the family's reputation. When Willie got killed and then dissed in songs, it wasn't just an ATK loss, it was a family loss that demanded response. The prosecutors would later argue that this context, the ongoing beef, the diss tracks, the family connections, all provided the motive for Buck's murder. They painted a picture of a young man caught between his music career and street obligations, ultimately choosing violence that would cost him everything. The court case.
Sitting here today, you realize that you are testifying against not only co-defendants, but family members.
Yes.
Who is the person that was captured on the video recording shooting Charles McCormick?
My son.
Fast forward to 2025, and Ksoo's murder trial became the most watched legal proceeding in Jacksonville's history. What started as a street beef had evolved into a complex legal case involving cooperating witnesses, forensic evidence, and family betrayal that nobody saw coming. The prosecution came out swinging with their evidence. They had surveillance footage from multiple angles showing the silver Nissan at the scene. They had cell phone data putting Ksoo in the area. They had DNA evidence from the abandoned car, but their star witness was Dominique Buddha Barner, an insider who claimed to know exactly what went down. His dad testified against him earlier in an interrogation room video. The investigators confronted him about the video that showed what Ksoo was wearing.
Now, when you watch that video, could you see what the shooter was wearing?
Yes, sir.
Could you see how the shooter ran?
Yes, sir.
How the shooter moved?
Yes, sir.
Did you also see the firearm that was used?
Yes, sir.
But then he was asked the real question where we would truly find out how honest he was going to be in response to the allegations against his son, K. So he revealed the shocking answer that we had all been waiting for.
Now, when you watched that video of the murder of Charles McCormick, did you recognize the shooter?
Yes, sir.
Who was the shooter in that video?
Hakeem Robinson.
Your son, Hakeem Robinson.
Yes, sir.
With fans all over the comment section of videos calling him a snitch and saying that he was a bad parent. An example for Ksoo and his kids, it seemed that even the streets were turning against him. In the streets, being a snitch, let alone on your own family, is a sign of weakness, and people were calling him out on it. For example, one comment said, "One of the worst snitches I've ever seen in my life," while another said, "What's worse, teaching your kids that it's okay to murder or snitch on them?" just checking out people's mindset. Several comments show that people are divided, with some supporting Ksoo, while others were all against the murder in the situation in its entirety. What do y'all think? Comment below if you think some people in the comment sections of these videos got it twisted. But the most down-to-earth comment came down to when one person said, "What's even more disgusting is that his son and friends kill other young men and he helped them. That's what people should be outraged about instead of that he told." But Buddha's testimony, on the other hand, was explosive. He told the jury he was present when ATK members planned the hit on Buck. According to him, this was direct retaliation for the "Who I Smoke" diss track, and Ksoo was the trigger man. He gave details about how they stole the car, how they tracked Buck's movements, and how they celebrated after the murder. But here's where things got controversial. Buddha was testifying as part of a cooperation deal. He was facing his own serious charges and basically traded information for a lighter sentence. The defense hammered this point, arguing that Buddha would say anything to save his own skin. The forensic evidence was complex and contested. Prosecutors brought in experts who testified that the DNA found in the stolen Nissan matched Ksoo's profile. They analyzed the shell casings and linked them to other shootings allegedly involving ATK members. They even brought in specialists to enhance the surveillance footage, claiming they could identify Ksoo as a shooter. The defense fought back hard. They questioned the reliability of the DNA evidence, pointing out contamination possibilities. They argued the surveillance footage was too grainy to make positive identifications. They painted Buddha as a liar trying to pin crimes on others to reduce his own sentence. What really made this trial different was how rap culture became evidence. Prosecutors played Ksoo's music videos in court, analyzing his lyrics line by line. They argued that his songs weren't just entertainment, they were confessions. When Ksoo rapped about sliding on ops and catching bodies, prosecutors said he was literally describing real murders. The defense tried to counter this by bringing in experts on hip-hop culture. They argued that drill rap is a form of artistic expression, that violent lyrics are part of the genre's aesthetic, and that treating rap as evidence criminalized Black artistic expression. They pointed out that plenty of rappers talk about violence without actually committing crimes. But then came the moment that changed everything. On July 14, 2025, the prosecution called a surprise witness, Abdul Blue Robinson, Ksoo's own father. The courtroom went dead silent as Blue took the stand against his own son.
Is this easy for you to do?
No, this is the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life.
In court, some saw him show love to his family and that he was trying to stand up and provide evidence, thinking he was doing the right thing. But others in the room were suspicious of his true intentions.
You love your family, Mr. Robinson. That's what we just heard, right?
Yes.
I guess you love yourself. Right? Yes or no, sir?
Of course. Self-love first, right?
What Blue did next sent shockwaves through Jacksonville and beyond. Prosecutors played the surveillance footage from the night of Buck's murder, and Blue identified the person in the video as his son, Ksoo. He pointed out specific details, the way he walked, his build, his mannerisms, that he said proved it was Ksoo pulling the trigger. The betrayal was complete when it was revealed that Blue was testifying as part of his own plea deal. He was facing serious charges himself and had agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. The man who was supposed to protect his son was now the key witness, sending him to prison for life. The impact of Blue's testimony was devastating. Here was a father who knew his son better than anyone, identifying him as a killer. The defense tried to argue that Blue was being coerced, that he was saving himself at his son's expense, but the damage was done. Throughout the trial, Ksoo maintained his innocence. His lawyers argued he was being railroaded because of his music and his associations. They pointed out inconsistencies in witness testimony and questioned why certain evidence wasn't preserved properly. The jury also heard about the second murder charge Ksoo was facing, the 2019 killing of Adrian Gaynor Jr., also known as Bibby. Prosecutors argued this showed a pattern of violence, while the defense fought to keep it separate, saying it would prejudice the jury. What made the trial even more intense was the heavy security presence. Metal detectors, armed guards, and separate entrances for different groups showed how real the threat of violence was. The beef that started on the streets had followed everyone into the courtroom. Social media was going crazy throughout the trial. Fans were live tweeting testimony, analyzing evidence, and picking apart every argument, all while Ksoo himself was sitting in the courtroom, watching the footage, back with everyone else in the room. The divide between ATK and 6 Block supporters played out in comment sections and on Instagram Live. It was like the street beef had gone digital and legal at the same time. The prosecution's closing argument painted Ksoo as a calculated killer who used his music career as cover for his criminal activities. They argued that Buck's murder wasn't just street violence. It was premeditated murder carried out in cold blood as revenge for a song.
All right, Mr. Robinson, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of the offense charged in the indictment in case number 2020 CF 3601.
The defense's closing was emotional, focusing on reasonable doubt and the pressure young black men face in violent environments. They argued that Ksoo was being convicted for his lifestyle and his art, not because the evidence proved he killed anyone. After 5 days of deliberation, the jury reached their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder.
State of Florida versus Hakeem Robinson, verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, found the defendant guilty of first-degree murder.
Ksoo showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but his supporters in the gallery broke down. The man who had been one of Jacksonville's most promising rap stars was now facing mandatory life in prison. The future for Ksoo.
I got some health issues. I got 2 6-year-olds and an 8-year-old daughter.
Mr. Robinson, could you state your name for the record, please?
Hakeem Armani Robinson.
The guilty verdict hit Jacksonville's rap scene like a bomb. July 18, 2025 became a day that divided the city even further. ATK supporters claimed Ksoo was set up while 6 Block affiliates celebrated what they saw as justice for Buck. But nobody could ignore the elephant in the room. A father had testified against his own son in a murder trial. Blue's betrayal became the talk of the streets. In a culture where snitching is the ultimate sin, what do you call it when your own pops takes a stand? The situation was unprecedented. Old heads who had been through the system couldn't recall anything like it. The code of the streets had been shattered in the most fundamental way possible. Ksoo's co-defendant, his cousin, ATK Scotty, got convicted too. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and burglary in connection with Buck's death. Both men are facing mandatory life sentences, with formal sentencing scheduled for September 8, 2025. But Ksoo's legal troubles aren't over. He's still facing trial for the 2019 murder of Adrian "Bibby" Gaynor Jr. That case involves similar evidence, surveillance footage, social media posts, and witness testimony. If convicted in that case too, any chance of eventual release becomes even more remote.
I'm gonna ask you some questions right now about what it is that you have in your possession in terms of tangible assets and money, okay?
Okay.
In a court hearing from the past, judges and attorneys were asking him info on his assets, with some speculating that they were trying to take his assets before he would go to prison.
Do you have a checking account?
I don't know what a checking account is.
Okay, do you have any bank accounts?
And they were not playing around. They asked specific questions as if they were the IRS.
How much money do you collectively have in your bank accounts? As far as you can remember, because I know you've been incarcerated for a long time.
Well, before I got locked up, I had like $1,000.
The impact on Jacksonville's music scene has been profound. Venues are reluctant to book drill artists, fearing violence. The police are monitoring rap videos and social media more closely than ever. What was once a thriving local scene has been transformed into a cautionary tale about the intersection of music and street life. Young artists coming up are facing an impossible choice. The authenticity that fans demand, the real street credibility, comes with real consequences. But without that authenticity, it's hard to break through in the drill scene. It's a catch-22 that's claiming young lives and destroying careers. Ksoo's team took over his account and renamed it to Operation Free Ksoo, where more recent posts about the court case showed direct posts from Ksoo himself explaining what was going on. In an Instagram post from about a week ago, he said, "I had an all-white 12 jurors with 3 white state attorneys, with I white judge in I courtroom, with all white judges on the wall. Every black person that I could pick on my juror was struck by the state. I just showed the whole world how Jacksonville, Florida is corrupt, and my lawyers proved I was innocent. God got the last say." So, now whether or not he was guilty, comment what y'all really think. But with the music videos, the lyrics, the evidence, and his own father testifying against him, it's going to be a nearly impossible for when he is going to hear his sentence. But on the other hand, the use of rap lyrics as evidence has become a major talking point. Civil rights organizations are arguing this practice criminalizes black art. and violates free speech. They point out that other genres of music with violent content, from country songs about killing cheating spouses to heavy metal about murder, don't get treated as confessions in court. The case has also highlighted the role of social media in modern criminal investigations. Every post, every live video, every comment becomes potential evidence. The same platforms these young men use to build their careers are being used to build cases against them. For the families involved, the pain runs deep on all sides. Buck's family got some measure of justice, but it won't bring him back. Ksoo's family is shattered. His father is a pariah who testified against his own blood, and his son is facing life behind bars. The cycle of violence has destroyed multiple generations. The financial impact is real too. Ksoo had just been starting to see real money from his music. Features, shows, and streaming revenue were finally adding up. Now all of that is gone, replaced by legal fees and commissary accounts. The music industry that once promised escape from the streets became a pathway to prison. What's particularly tragic is how young everyone involved is. Ksoo was just 20 when Buck was killed, and only 25 when convicted. Buck was 23 when he died, Scotty, Butter, and the others. All young men whose lives have been defined by violence before they really had a chance to live. The prosecution's success in this case has emboldened them to pursue other drill-related murders. They've shown they can use social media evidence, flip witnesses, and convince juries that rap lyrics equal confessions. Other cities are watching and taking notes, but questions remain about the fairness of it all. Was Ksoo really convicted based on solid evidence, or was he found guilty of being a drill rapper in a violent city? Did Blue really recognize his son in grainy surveillance footage, or did he say what he needed to say to save himself? These questions will linger long after the appeals are filed. The broader implications for hip-hop culture are still being debated. This case represents a new level of prosecution tactics against rap artists. The combination of lyrics, social media, and cooperating witnesses creates a powerful prosecutorial tool that defense attorneys are struggling to counter. Current status: Ksoo remains in custody awaiting formal sentencing and his second murder trial. His music lives on through streaming platforms, a ghostly reminder of what could have been. The streets are still hot, with the beef between ATK and 6 Block continuing despite the convictions. Some are calling for peace, trying to broker truces before more young men die or end up serving life sentences. But the cycle seems hard to break. Every fallen soldier demands retaliation. Every diss track requires a response. Every conviction creates more anger and resentment. The story of Ksoo, from rising star to convicted killer, serves as a warning about the deadly intersection of street life and entertainment. In a world where authenticity is currency and violence is content, the line between art and evidence has never been thinner. The question now is whether Jacksonville's drill scene can survive this verdict, or if Ksoo's conviction marks the beginning of the end for a culture that's already claimed too many lives. Click the box on your screen to check out another wild story from the streets. Appreciate y'all. Drop a sub if you made it this far. It really means a lot to me.